Live. Hello and welcome to the Benefit of the Dowd podcast, the Douding Thomas edition. We are talking about May of 2022. Can you believe it is June already? That is crazy. And to answer that somewhat rhetorical question is Dr. Bluetooth himself, Cliff Thomas. I forgot about the Dr. Bluetooth thing. How you doing, Cliff?
It's also my Twitter handle. Well, not my Twitter handle. It's my name.
Right.
On Twitter.
Right.
How did that happen? I don't even remember now.
I don't remember.
It's just there now.
I think it was a Slack thing, and
yeah, that's exactly what it was. You know what? I think that's actually what it was. I think it was if it wasn't a misspelling thanks to a software keyboard, it was something like that. Like it was something where it just came in, and I think I said something to the effect of, "Oh, I'm going to be Dr. Bluetooth." That just happened. Which, by the way, sounds like a rejected name for a James Bond movie.
I think my problem was I connected Dr. Bluetooth first. And you said, who or what is that? And I said, connected to Bluetooth, and hilarity ensued. Okay, so now that we've explained that joke into it being stupid again, I guess you have to change your name. But no, actually, no, keep it, because Dr. Bluetooth is just awesome. Yeah, so a couple of things, a little house keeping that we can talk about.
Sure.
First of all, the YouTube video for last week, which was the top story where Cliff and I discussed the phone market, hasn't gone up yet because of technical issues, and I'm an idiot. I talked about it on the intro to the podcast, so if you missed that, I just screwed up. There is something coming. I got to get it up, hopefully later today, but it's a complicated process. So
I did enjoy your intro to last week's podcast where you talked.
Oh, did you?
Speaking very softly
into
the mic and not yelling. And I never thought that was an issue, but maybe someone does.
Well, then I intentionally went back to yelling for the hello, welcome. So yeah, I honestly, I was in a weird place when I wrote that, so I just figured
I could tell.
I just figured I would run with it. But anyway, so another piece of business. This is the last Doubting Thomas before season 3 will end. The show will be going on hiatus from June 15th until July 17th. And it will begin, the hiatus will begin and end with a Beyond a Doubt. The upcoming Beyond a Doubt is going to be with Mr. Juan Bagnell, and the July Beyond a Doubt is still being negotiated, but I think I have a pretty good guess lined up. It's going to be fun. So there will not be a Doubting Thomas for June because there's only going to be a couple of stories. There will not be one for July because there's also only going to be a couple of stories, but there will be one for July, which will be which will come out in August, which will talk about the first 2 weeks of June and the last 2 weeks of July.
Get ready for a 4-hour marathon Doubting Thomas.
No, that's not going to happen at all. But and then coming back from into season 4, we've got some good stuff lined up. So I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time, and a good time will be had by all. So that's really that does it for the housekeeping portion of the show. So we can just start talking about the month that was, shall we? Unless you had any other announcements that you wanted to make. I don't think you.
I am Dr. Bluetooth.
You are Dr. Bluetooth. Welcome to the show, Dr. Bluetooth. So we started off May by talking about Elon Musk buying Twitter, and the discourse on that has actually pretty drastically reduced since we talked about it. Like, I think it's still happening, but it's just, I guess people are not freaking out about it anymore. So maybe this is a good time to actually talk about what's going on.
I mean, the thing with anything to do with Elon Musk is he has so many things going on that it's not to say that there shouldn't be discourse about it, but he's been super active on Twitter.
Yes,
I actually refollowed him on Twitter recently just so I could see all of the fun things that he's saying. And it's very political now, which I don't remember him being so much before. And he's commented about things like the SEC and the federal government and in general and oil prices. And it's just, yeah.
Kind of seems like he's back to pre-lawyer Elon Musk, doesn't it?
It does. It's been, I don't want to say it's been fun, because honestly it's been annoying. And I think I've had too much Elon Musk.
Yeah. And I commented on one of the episodes this month. I don't remember, but please can I just have a week where I don't talk about Elon Musk and Twitter? And this week, spoiler alert, is not that week.
Its own. The Verge, sorry, you can probably cut that out. But I was just going to say, I mean, it's to the point where, you know, I don't remember exactly what it's called, but
its own storyline.
Well, so they used to have a segment that would just come every once in a while into the Verge cast.
Okay.
And I wish I could remember. I don't listen enough to the Verge cast to be so much up on it, but oh my gosh, they made me laugh, because it was something to the effect of that they thought that they were going to have to create their own Elon podcast because there's so much news. And I think it was actually called, it's a newsletter. That's what it was. They had this month in Elon, and they said we're going to have to convert it to a this week in Elon or this day in Elon, because there's just so much
Elon
news. And they're like, we're going to I think they said they had like 4 writers that were kind of dedicated to the this week in Elon news, because there's just so much. It's way too much for one person to cover. So anyway, it made me laugh. Sorry to interrupt what you were about to say, but
no,
it
it's
did make
fine.
me laugh.
Speaking of Elon Musk, though, I don't know if you saw earlier today, an email leaked out that Elon sent to his executive team saying that working from home is no longer acceptable. And executives are expected to spend a minimum, and I mean minimum, of 40 hours per week or depart Tesla. And when someone commented on that, Elon, a lot of people are talking about this leaked email, and the additional comment to people who are thinking about coming into work. Okay, sorry. Hey, Elon, a lot of people are talking about this leaked email. Any additional comment to people who think coming into work is an antiquated concept? And he responded, they should pretend to work somewhere else. So apparently Elon Musk does not think very highly of remote working. So I guess it begs the question then, when you own 3 companies, how much time are you going to spend in your office? And I don't think it's going to be 40 hours a week at all 3 offices. I'm just saying, you're going to have to do some stuff remotely. Anyway,
it was very aggressive. First of all, when I was hit the email that I read,
yes,
I did understand where he was coming from. In the one case he cited where he was talking about managing it was essentially like HR stuff.
Yeah.
From a different state. However, I think that's very much cherry picked.
Well, and
as an example for him.
Now, now I get it. You know, people not everybody can work successfully remotely. I get that. I totally get that. In fact, I was one of them for like the first 3 years that I was working remotely. I sucked working from home. But, you know, that's something that has grown to be a skill of mine over, I would say, the last 18 to 20 months, give or take, that I've really started to, you know, settle in and really lean into working from home and actually being successful while working from home. So, I mean, it's not for everybody. I totally get that. But I think if we've learned anything over these last 2 years, it should be that there's a lot of jobs that can be done remotely and, you know, can very successfully be done remotely. So I don't know. I guess, you know, some folks will, you know, prefer to keep things the way they are. Some folks prefer to move forward. So Elon is, you know, a futurist who, for some reason, thinks that the internet doesn't exist. So we'll just move on from that, I guess. But anyway, no. But getting back to Elon buying Twitter, again, I think there's a lot less discourse about it these days, and I think it really what it boils down to is I just don't care. And this isn't to say that I really did care to begin with. I know it seemed like we cared because we dedicated a whole show to it. But I mean, really, whoever owns the platform, it doesn't matter. I'm going to use it or not use it as it makes my job better or worse. And that's really what it boils down to. I don't really care who owns it.
I mean, I care to a point, but it's not as if some hegemony of autocratic leaders bought it from from the previous, I don't want to say ownership, but from where it was, and they're turning it into something that is evil.
Right.
I hear my thing is still very much a wait and see, because we just don't know anything yet, and honestly, the thing that I think is very funny that's happened since I guess we recorded about it is just the amount of, I don't want to say it's like Elon trying to back out of it.
Oh,
but the amount of criticism that he has had for certain things, and it just, that makes it seem like he's trying to back out of it, and also just makes it seem like he's trying to generate controversy where there shouldn't be any, and where there really isn't any, and to pretend like he doesn't have a $1 billion buyout clause that he's trying to, anyway, it's just a bunch of silliness, and I kind of just wish I could take a hot knife and cut through it like butter to see what's actually going on behind the scenes. I mean, we just don't really know. I mean, it's all behind closed doors.
You could be a fly in that wall. That would be a fascinating.
Would be interesting.
But
I do wonder if Elon actually would like to back out of it. I honestly don't know. I can't imagine that he would, after all the work he went into, getting to the place where he financially could get to a place in terms of the bid that they would accept. I'm gesturing with a hand that was off camera. A bid that they would accept, got to. So I don't know. It just, I'm glad that I'm not having to think about it so much anymore, because I'm glad to be past it. And I think that's kind of where you're at.
I still think the one tweet is still pretty funny, though. How come Elon Musk has $44 billion to buy Twitter, but he doesn't have $44 billion to pay taxes?
It's very true.
It's a very good question, but we should probably move on to something that does not cost $44 billion. In fact, it costs decidedly less than $44 billion. It is the OnePlus Nord N20, and we had friend of the show, Miriam Jouar, on to talk about the Nord N20. And if you haven't listened to the full interview yet, you need to, because Miriam Jouar is just an encyclopedia of knowledge about not only OnePlus phones, but phones from overseas, and OnePlus Nord phones in particular. So like a lot of stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor was, and this is generally like when you listen to a full interview, a lot of what you're going to end up on the cutting room floor is stuff that dives into like really super specifics. I'll leave the general stuff in, like, oh, the camera's good, but I'll take out the specific stuff, like, oh, the camera's good, like when I take a picture of my dog and it's running down the sidewalk or something like that. So like that's a very harsh example, but
having podcasted with Miriam before, I would say that what you took out based on the length of the interview probably could be clipped back together into its own podcast, because as you said, she is very knowledgeable, especially about phones that are overseas, and also the
budget,
the foundations of those phones.
Oh yeah,
especially
absolutely.
When you have something like Xiaomi or and their various different sub brands, or BBK and all of their different brands, and the sort of the parts that go into them that are shared. And just, I mean, if you, I will put a plug in for her podcast, because I do listen to it and I do enjoy it. I believe it's the Mobile Tech podcast.
Mobile Tech Podcast. Very easy, very well named because it's very easy to know. And if you don't listen to the podcast, you should, because she has, guests every week, and they talk about the news of the week, similar to what we do here, but obviously much more stressed out. And she actually talks about rumors, which I don't do. Which is when I went on her podcast a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, when I went on her podcast, it was like all rumors, and I'm like, this is not stuff I ever talk about. But anyway,
that was you, and I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but I'm always interested when she has one of the media people or media relations people from MediaTek on.
MediaTek, yeah.
Because while that sounds like a PR thing, and they are technically like a PR person, they ended up always talking about, especially with MediaTek. MediaTek has its hands in things besides mobile chipsets. They do Wi-Fi, and their related chipsets are also in Chromebooks specifically, and that's some places where they're making some big strides, like the Compagno series, and so it's always very interesting to me when they have, probably more so when she has a MediaTek person on. I think obviously they should listen to that particular podcast because you were on there.
Right.
If you're listening to this, obviously
this podcast not brought to you by MediaTek, by the way.
Not at all. But this is just whether or not you endorse MediaTek or not, it's just very interesting because they do that. Their media relations people really do get into, I don't want to call it the nitty gritty, but they really talk about some things that are interesting.
Qualcomm does too. Qualcomm gets into it as well.
They do, but more so. But they always feel a little less technical as far as their media relations people.
Yeah, I agree.
To me, and just listening to her podcast. So it's definitely, I haven't listened to it yet, but having heard MediaTek people on there before, it's definitely a good listen. I have no doubt. So
yeah, definitely. So the OnePlus Nord N20, the main reason I wanted to try it out was because I was fascinated to see what the Nord line was like, because I'd never used one before. It always kind of fell by the wayside for me because there were a number of different reasons. OnePlus has a lot of variants for the Nord depending on regions, which always is kind of a turnoff for me. And
most of which don't come to our shores.
Yeah, most of which don't come to the US. And so I wanted to try out the Nord. That's why when OnePlus reached out, I said, yeah, that can be me. And I just it was a very interesting experience. The build is so nice on that thing. It's just very, very premium feeling, almost like, kind of like how the TCL Pros used to do. Had that premium feeling despite being plastic. Same thing with the Nord. The gigantic cameras on the back, one of which is a 64 megapixel camera, and the other one is a 2 megapixel camera, but they have the same size housing. That's like the size of a nickel, I think.
That actually really bothered me when it looks great if you were to look at the phone from about a couple of feet away, even. It just, to me, as someone who cares about industrial design, I mean, I'm a graphic designer, I'm not an industrial designer, but then you see the sensors in it, and it's just like, it looks like an ant looking out of a porthole on a ship. As far as the smaller sensors are concerned, it looks ridiculous, but it is a good looking device. I'll agree. It's very like, oh, he's getting it out.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. It's in this basket somewhere.
But yeah, it kind of the hardware design outside of the squircle on the back for the cameras, kind of because it has the flat, the slab sides and the chamfers, kind of reminds me of like an iPhone 5. And and I like slab sided phones like that. I like what Sony does with their phones, and so I like and it's very different that the phone that you reviewed from, and he's holding it up.
Yep.
But it's very different from some of the design language of their other devices. In fact, it feels to me more attractive in some ways than like the OnePlus 10 Pro, or at least more distinctive.
Yeah. And what's really cool, what's fun is, it's got the, the side rails like you were talking about. And then the glass kind of sits up on top. So, there's like a distinctive layer between the two.
Right. Oh yeah, that little like space between the side rails and then the is it plastic on the back or is it glass?
It's plastic, yeah.
Okay,
definitely.
But I mean, it feels like they made an effort. I haven't held it in hand, but I've seen it in pictures and I've heard you talk about it, and I've heard Miriam talk about it, and
yeah,
along with others. So,
I mean, overall, it's for was it $282? I think it is. It's a very decent option, but it's also T-Mobile exclusive, and I think what was it? Was it last week or the week before? I was looking on OnePlus.com, and you still can't buy this on OnePlus.com because it's still a T-Mobile exclusive, which I find absolutely hilarious. Although actually, OnePlus Nord N20 5G, sign up for our newsletter. Okay, and if you hit the button, it takes you to T-Mobile.com to buy it. So you still can't buy it from T-Mobile or from OnePlus directly.
I mean, I'd be surprised if because I mean I don't know how long exclusives last with T-Mobile, but I'd be surprised if you can buy it before like the end of July.
Yeah,
from I would OnePlus's website. Yeah,
I would too, but I still think that's kind of hilarious. But yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's a neat phone. If you happen to be in the market and you happen to be on T-Mobile, which is a lot of caveats, then this is a decent one to take a look at. But don't expect a lot from the camera. Just to be honest, the camera is not wonderful. It just has the one main sensor, and it has a 2-megapixel monochrome and a 2-megapixel depth camera, I think.
I mean,
so
for less than $300, I can't think of any cameras that I would think would get you any images that are great outside of good light. So
right.
And from what you said, I mean, you were getting pretty good pictures out of it in good light. So
in good light, yes, and that's always the caveat. but and again,
if you will.
Well, and again, at full res, the photos weren't all that great, so they were very much social media good.
Instagram ready.
There you go. And speaking of Instagram, this has nothing to do with Instagram, but we talked about Google I/O with Daniel Bader, which was an experience for sure. Google I/O is, Google's annual developers conference, and it was my last event that I ran with Digital Trends, and it was fairly stressful because Google didn't send us a whole lot ahead of time, but there was a lot going on there. So I just wanted to start off with your thoughts on Google I/O and what you took away from it.
Let me think about this for a second. Now I have to rewind my brain back to 2 weeks ago. I mean,
know, right?
Android 13 doesn't seem like it's going to cosmetically add a lot to what we already have based on the betas that we've seen, and that's not even my experience from Google I/O. I thought it was, from like a consumer hardware standpoint, kind of interesting, although not that unexpected that they went ahead and previewed the 7 and the 7 Pro as far as with actual like product images. Not that, and I'm actually happy about this. I am glad to see with the Pixel line some like design consistency, because they haven't really, or if they've had any kind of design consistency, it's been more with their A line, and then their like more premium line has kind of been all over the place because they've done that proverbial like throw stuff up against the wall and see what sticks with things like I can't remember what the name of it was, but the competitor to Apple's Face Unlock with the security and all of that, all that kind of stuff. That's affected the hardware design. And last year with the 6 and the 6 Pro, they came out with something with the camera bar across the back, and then the general hardware design that was I would call it restrained, but also different and distinctive. And it looks like this is a variant of that. And then they did confirm the Pixel 6a, which also shares that design.
July 21st. Yep.
Yeah, I'm so excited about that. And then they also previewed the next generation of Pixel Buds, I believe.
Yep, Pixel Buds Pro.
Yeah, the Pixel Buds Pro, which I'm kind of excited about. They have a like Google's specific coprocessor, which is, I mean, it's done wonders for the Pixel 6, and so I'll be interesting to see what that actually brings, because otherwise, with that kind of stuff, you're kind of just relying on like what a Qualcomm chipset, and it's more hard to distinguish or yourself from your competitors, except for fit and finish, and I guess just like the external hardware design, unless you do something crazy different, like what Logitech did with their oh gosh, what's their high end buds that will shape themselves to your ear. I can't remember the name of the brand right now, but anyway, those are very comfortable. By the way, we'll talk. I actually do, even though it's been a while. I don't think I talked about those on this program.
Probably not.
No, but they're interesting. Anyway, and then they also get a very, very limited preview of a Pixel tablet that's coming. That has been rumored to be coming, and won't launch until 2023.
Yep.
And the rumor, and based on the fact that the rumors are true that they're coming out with a tablet. This is, I think, and I know you don't do rumors, but I'll just talk about it because it's me. It's supposed to be really something to tie into your smart home. So in a way, sort of the next step with their Google Home series.
Yeah, it's basically so there were some rumors suggesting that it could come out at this Google I/O. It would basically be a Google Nest Home Hub,
was what I was
whatever it's called. But with a detachable screen, so it would be like, and again, that kind of, that's one of the common refrains on this podcast is I love it when tablets find something to do when you're not using them.
Yes, absolutely.
So
it makes total sense to me from like the way I use a tablet, which is mostly around the house. I'm actually using a tablet at work a little bit now, but it's the first time that I've done that now that I have an iPad. And that's I almost kind of consider an Apple tablet its own thing, or an iPad its own thing in terms of, for me, usefulness. Anything that's Android based is very useful around the house, even at like a premium level, but I generally don't take it outside of the house. And so, content consumption and then controlling my smart home makes a ton of sense, especially if you combine it with, I'll be curious to see if it's running Android. I mean, we honestly don't know at this point, but I'll be curious to see how they sort of integrate the stuff that the Nest Hubs have in combination with, maybe, if this is actually, I would assume it's either going to be running Android or it's going to be running Fuchsia with some kind of evolved version of what the hubs are running. So
I would have to think it would be running Android if
I would think so
it
too.
A tablet.
Yeah.
But maybe it'll have some.
I'm sure it won't be cheap.
Yeah, exactly. And then we also got some. So, what did you think about announcing the Pixel 6a release date, and then immediately showing what the Pixel 7 is going to be? Because Andy Boxall at Digital Trends wrote that Google doesn't want you to buy any of its smartphones because the timing of that is just so deeply weird, that the Pixel 6a is going to come out in July of 2022, and then the Pixel 7 will come this coming fall, and it's only going to be $150 more. And what exactly was his headline? I don't remember. Was it Google doesn't? It's like Google doesn't want you to buy. I don't remember if it was he doesn't want you to buy either phone.
It was Google doesn't want you to buy the Pixel 6.
No, I that's not what it was. Oh, okay. Hang on. Now I got to look this up now. But basically, Google,
because I specifically remember that. I specifically remember reading that headline. Google doesn't want you to buy the Pixel 6. And that could have been somebody else's writing, but
maybe, yeah. Okay, it was. Okay.
But that was so yeah, two things, right? So
yeah.
What I thought about the Pixel 6a, based on what's supposed to be in, like, hardware wise, it's supposed to be the same Tensor chipset as the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro. It'll just have less RAM, and then it really is a hybrid of like the Pixel 5a.
It's going to have the older camera sensors,
right? Yeah. Which, I mean, honestly, in some ways, I don't think that's a bad thing, because it's the same
Camera set thinks quite very deeply that it's going to be a great thing, because
I think it's gonna be an awesome phone.
Yeah, because she loves the processing that and the pipeline that is behind these sensors that Google has been using since
because they've been using them
since
the Pixel 3, right?
Right.
That same Sony, I think it's the 686 sensor that they've had, for like 4 generations,
something like that.
And I could be wrong, but I believe it's like X686. But
yeah,
I'm when it comes to the actual nomenclature, I'm like 50% there. But they have a lot of experience with that sensor, and we'll just pause there for just a second.
You can go ahead. I'll edit this out.
So I'm excited about the fact that this is the same camera set that they've had since the Pixel 3, I believe, in a phone that's going to cost what, $449?
$450, yeah, I believe it was the price, or $499 on Verizon because of the millimeter wave Verizon stupid tax.
Ridiculous, I know. So I think it's going to be an excellent phone, and honestly, the Pixel 5a was an excellent phone, and so this will just be one step up from that. And I believe it's supposed to have an in-display fingerprint sensor, just like the Pixel 6.
But you know what? Just side note about that Verizon stupid tax. My last piece that I wrote for Digital Trends, I was testing 5G around Chicago.
Yeah, I saw that.
On a Verizon phone, I got 4 gigs down.
Yeah, because you were facing the right way.
Well, no. So, kind of, yes. So, Jules and I actually went back to that corner this week when
was that his picture?
Town. Oh, maybe.
No, because he posted on Instagram it looked like he had a Samsung foldable, and he was testing. I could be wrong. It was kind of hard to tell because it was kind of blurry, but it looked like he had a Samsung device, and he was in Chicago on a corner, and he was using speedtest.net or the speedtest.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that was the one that we did, and we got 3.9 down instead of 4 down. So it wasn't as dependent as it normally is, but it was anyway. So I'm sorry, go back to what you were saying.
Well, they've only had 2 years to build out their infrastructure, and
right, that's true.
I think in the right scenarios, and especially for something that like home based, if they really do build it out the way they talk about building it out, it is the most promising 5G technology in terms of speed and robustness. It's just that I think it's very expensive to roll out, and because it requires right now so many different antennas or nodes or whatever you want to call it in order to make it the experience that someone that's looking for that kind of speed needs, especially if it's like home based internet. So no, I just so going back to the Pixel 6a, it looks like it's going to be an awesome phone, and I actually agree with that headline. If that headline was indeed Google doesn't want you to buy a Pixel 6 because there's $150 in difference, and honestly, in some situations, the Pixel 6a camera, because it is a camera set that Google has a lot of experience with in some situations, even though the Pixel 6 is almost a year old now, the Pixel 6a might still get you possibly better results or as good, depending on the situation. So
almost certainly will give you better results. So
although I have to say, I've been using a Pixel 6 since November, and I am very, very happy with it.
Yeah.
So, it's all relative.
I used the Pixel 6 until the S22 Ultra came out. Then I've been on that. So, and actually now I'm on an iPhone Mini. Go figure. I got bored. I decided I wanted to. Well, actually coming soon to a tech near you. Zag is going to be sending a couple of watch bands for the Apple Watch. So that's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it.
Okay. Wait a minute. I thought you were gonna. Don't you have like your
the 6 months,
6 months on, 6 months off? thing?
Well, so I'm still carrying the S22 Ultra as like a second phone. So that's how I'm justifying it. And pretty much anything I'm doing that isn't like, primary phone stuff like calls and texts, I'm doing on the S22 Ultra. So it's fine.
I
It's
want to
allowed.
bring up something real quick.
Okay.
And yes, this is a rumor, but since we're talking real quick about, the fact that you're using the Apple Watch, which I don't blame you, especially if you have an iPhone. Obviously if you have an iPhone.
Right.
And that's that I just saw a rumor, I think it was 2 days ago, that the new this is actually tying back into Google. So hey, or IO, they announced the Pixel Watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so the rumor that I saw was that it's only going to get a day of battery, to which I say,
Yes.
duh.
Right.
I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
what, like, and this always, I don't know why. And yes, I am a Google Pixel fan, but it always feels like after Google I/O and like the announced stuff, I'm sure it's the same thing with iPhones to some extent, but it almost feels like media just starts posting like subtle bashing of stuff based on rumors. And it's like,
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? Like, of course, I mean, what I mean, it's clicks and all that kind of stuff, and it creates the controversy that generates those clicks. But it's just like, what are you expecting? It's based on, from what we understand, an older chipset with a coprocessor, and you can only fit so much of a battery with the same tech that we've been using in Wear OS for the last 7 years.
Well,
Like, and unless you're using like a glorified fitness tracker, you're going to get about a day of battery life.
I think the criticism is more towards the operating system rather than like the hardware, because again, I tweeted earlier today that I was using the Apple Watch because I lost the proprietary charger for the Garmin when I moved my desk around, which was earlier last week. And you know what? The Garmin's not dead yet. So like,
how good is Garmin at controlling things like your smart home?
It's not.
Exactly.
But
it's a fitness tracker.
But how good is the Android Wear at controlling your smart home? Not very. I mean, like, it's okay. It's okay. Don't get me wrong. Like, I know you can do Nest on it and stuff like that, but it doesn't hold a candle to the Apple Watch in controlling
my point is that
home.
I would consider the Apple Watch the pinnacle of what I would call like your full-fledged smartwatch, right? Which while support for Wear OS is from different parties much less, and the capabilities because of that to some extent are limited, and maybe the OS itself is limited, it's still, when it comes to like responding to notifications and emails and things like that, is still more powerful than something like an Amazfit watch or something from like a Fitbit Band or something from another competitor. So that's my point. To me, like, even like a Huawei GT whatever watch is basically
a fitness band.
It has the look of more of your traditional smartwatch, but it's basically it's a real-time OS that isn't as powerful, and because of that is just doesn't consume power like Wear OS or an Apple Watch does. And so that's all I'm saying, is just like, until battery tech gets better, unless you want a watch that's like an inch tall, you're going to be dealing with a day of battery life, and I'm okay with that because you know what you're getting into.
But I think the criticism there is, how much better is Wear OS than a fitness tracker? And a strong argument can be made, not very. So then why do you make that trade-off to have a real smartwatch operating system if all you're getting is a fitness tracker that you can adjust your Nest on, but it lasts 1/7 the amount of time or 1/14 the amount of time on a battery charge? See, that's, I think, is the main criticism here.
I would agree.
If the Pixel Watch had everything that the Apple Watch did, fine. I totally get it. Yes, you're allowed to have 1 day of battery life, and you're totally allowed big big permissions from, the gallery, fine. But if all you are is a glorified fitness tracker that happens to have a Google sticker on it, that trade-off is not acceptable.
Well, I'm in complete agreement. I think the argument could be made that for most people, 90% plus of people, especially people that are, I mean, first of all, I think for most people, you don't even really need a smartwatch.
Fair.
In general, if you have a smartphone, I mean, I think your smartphone does everything you need it to.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
But if you are into fitness, you should, or into calorie counting and step counting, and you just want to get notifications, then I think for most people, you don't need especially don't need a Wear OS based device. I think,
right.
Unless you are going to buy an Apple Watch, I think most people are better off buying a fitness band or something of the like. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Because I use Android phones most of the time, and I just like to spend money, apparently, will every once in a while buy a new smartphone or smartwatch.
Apparently? You're just now realizing? Sorry.
Okay.
Anyway.
The horse is dead, my friend.
Yeah. So sorry about that. Anyway,
it's literally just bloody pulp on the ground now.
So speaking of spending money, why don't we go ahead and take a moment to do our patron shout outs, which I don't know, it feels like it's been a long time since we did it, and I'm just gonna leave out the fact that I don't think we did it last month. But anyway, so our patron shout outs for the $5 level or more, we've got Mike Hahn, we have Haim T, we have Scott Brady. Thank you very much to all of you. We have Neil Wilson and Josh Stone. Thank you very much to both of you. We have Zachary Palmer, and last but certainly not least, we have Clifton Thomas. Thank you very much, Cliff. And thank you to all of the patrons that are contributing at the $5 level or more. You love the show, and the show loves you.
We love you.
So let's, and there's a lot.
Bluetooth.
That's true. That's true. Very true. I should have actually given you your patron shout out this but let's and there's a ton more that we could talk about with Google I/O. I mean, it was just a ton more. But let's go ahead and transition on over into the Steam Deck. And one thing I wanted to point out about this is at the last
I loved that conversation, by the way. So good.
It was a really good conversation.
Really good.
But at the last Douding Thomas, you might remember that Cliff, I don't know if he issued a challenge, or I don't remember exactly how it came about, but basically it was kind of like, I decided that I was just going to grab the audio, dump it into the thing, upload it, and call it a day. And you know what? Turned out great. It was perfectly fine. Turned out so well that when we had Andy Boxall on, I did the same thing. I just dumped the audio, hit play, and and added the music at the front and back, and also a great conversation. Actually, that one took some turns I was not expecting, but no, like really good turns. We got to talk about Lego and Star Wars. But anyway,
by the way, I really want the new Optimus Prime Lego.
Oh my god!
And I haven't bought any of the expensive Lego kits. I know
that came out today.
I told my wife I want it for Christmas, but it may not actually last that long.
I told my wife I want it for Father's Day. I told my wife I want it for Father's Day, and you know what the crappy part is? I'm going to be in Hawaii for Father's Day, so I'm going to have to wait until I get back.
That's not crap. What about that is crappy?
You're right. You're right.
I'm going to be in Hawaii.
That is the first worldiest of first world problems. Absolutely. I'm going to be in Hawaii for Father's Day, so I'm going to have to wait a whole other week before I get my Transforming Optimus Prime for Father's Day. Oh my God. This is the smallest violin in the world.
Yes.
And I have just crushed it with a hammer, and now I am playing it.
Be sipping from a pineapple cup.
My God. That was the literally, I mean, and this podcast does a lot of complaining, and that was literally the stupidest thing to ever complain about on this podcast. Thank you for pointing that out, because that
I understand what you're saying.
Because
you're waiting for it to show up at your doorstep, and meanwhile you're going to be sipping, like you're going to be watching hula dancers and like going on crazy things.
I'm trying to process just how stupid that was. Wow. Anyway, I think I might, that might be the title of this podcast, is I'm trying to process how stupid this was. Anyway. So, yes, I want Optimus Prime, and yes, I hope to get Optimus Prime, and yes, I probably will just go ahead and get Optimus Prime,
yes.
even if I have to buy it
in
myself.
Hawaii.
But not. I should buy it from a Lego store in Hawaii. Yes. That would be fun. Build it on the beach.
Give
and
him a little tiny
like
Lego hula. Just take some Legos with you. Hula skirt. No, I'm kidding. But the fact that it transforms, how cool!
I know. So Steam Deck.
It's like Sorry, I'm like that was like my favorite cartoon, and I by far. Except for Legos, had more Transformers than anything else when I was about
totally
7 or 8. And the fact that they went to, I'm just doing my little fanboy spiel here, but
the
fact that they based it off of the original, like OG, like the actual toy from the show, but then they actually like fixed the proportions to better match the actual like character. Like they based it off of the original toy, but then made it better. And then what
I'm sad about is that I don't think it'll fit in any of these slots.
Yeah, well, you'll have to it'll have to be in truck mode.
Even if it's in truck mode, I don't think it'll fit. But anyway, these are actually very small. I need to get a bigger one. Anyway, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, so you would think, getting back to the Steam Deck podcast, you would think having, Giovanni Colantonio and Matt Silverman, both podcasters themselves, I would have been able to just do the same thing. Just pull the audio, dump it in, call it. It was messed up. Like my audio was all over the place. Like the volume was all over the place.
So you were having that same problem that we were having before? I was having
the same problem. And Giovanni's audio was a little wonky, not too bad, but and then Matt's, for some reason, like every once in a while, and you heard it in the final edit a couple of times. It was very minor, but he would just like drop a second of audio for no reason at all. Like he would be mid-sentence and he'd be finishing something else. Well, and it was just so weird that it just did that. And I'm like, what the hell you would think like this would be the most bulletproof podcast ever. But
you think about that though, at least one of those guys has a podcast producer, right?
Well, Matt is a podcast producer.
Oh, never mind.
And I think Giovanni, I don't know who produces his podcast. He might do it, but
he might do it himself. But you would think that. But I mean, you also can't. I mean, I've had many an audio issue, especially because I like phones also now switch microphones.
Yeah.
But in computers, and there's just all those things that you can't foresee, like, you plugging a USB-C cable into a dock that wouldn't support it when we were doing that. I mean, there's things that you don't even consider until it actually happens. So it's sometimes it's problematic.
And shout out to Left Trigger, Right Trigger podcast, and Colette. Matt and Colette have entered the chat. Colette and Matt have entered the chat. I forget which order their names in, but I remember Matt chat. So Colette and Matt have entered the chat. Both very fun podcasts. I've listened to a few episodes of theirs. I'm not a gamer, so I don't really get a whole lot out of it, but I've listened to a few of their episodes just to check in with my friends,
They're really just in general, like before we jump into that particular subject, was that I feel like the last month in general was very juicy for our particular like channel in terms of like just great interviews and I was awesome, and so there's I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but when you start off the month with Cliff, things are going well.
Things can only go uphill from there.
That's not what I was going to say.
Well, let's talk about the Steam Deck.
Yeah. So the Steam Deck is, for those of you who are not aware, think of like a Nintendo Switch on steroids about every possible way. Actually, it's huge. Like
honestly, outside of the form factor, there's not that much similar with them.
Well, no, I mean, it has the joysticks on either side. Right. It's got the screen in the middle that you can play your mobile games. It's completely portable. It does set into a dock so that you can transfer it up into a larger screen if you want to. So there's some similarities.
But I guess I should talk about intention.
Right. But yeah, in terms of intention, you're right. It couldn't be any more different. And the thing that I take away from it, from the whole podcast, is that Steam is really doing some very interesting work about making PC games as portable as possible. Right now, that requires a Steam Deck, but the implications for the future could be very, very interesting.
The fact that they've open sourced the OS
Mm-hmm.
specific to, I mean, they've already had, I mean, Steam OS is something you could already install on like a Linux PC if you wanted to, or just
right.
But or I should say onto a PC, regardless of what was already on there before. It just was it's a Linux based, like basically gaming OS. But the fact that like that specific thing for the Steam Deck, like they've given it to other manufacturers, which I mean makes sense. It's kind of like Microsoft giving out Windows in a lot of ways, just specific to like a console,
a PC on every computer, on every desk running Windows software. That was Microsoft's long-stated goal, and it could be the same thing. You know,
you're
Steam
still
wants
buying
to be
stuff from the Steam store if you're actually like so
Steam wants to be the progenitor. I don't know. Basically, wants to be the default operating system when you're building a gaming platform, which is a very ambitious and very smart way to go about things.
And if you look, there are competitors out there that are they're smaller, I believe either Taiwanese or Chinese companies that are making form factor wise, but like PC system on a chip based for the most part, competitors to it. Although I don't think they're as high powered. I don't think they're like a Ryzen based, AMD based, portable console. But there are some that are a similar form factor that are running like Android and are more similar to, in intention to like Nintendo's Switch, but without, I guess they're more probably better for running like emulating games. So there's a whole bunch of different form factor wise competitors, but really the Steam Deck is its own thing. There's really nothing else out there like it right now in terms of its capabilities. And what I loved about the interview that you did was just hearing them. I mean, and this is very like nerdy stuff, and this is actually what makes for your average gamer, that makes the Steam Deck probably something that you don't want to have to deal with. You'd rather just use a small laptop that's got a decent, gaming discrete chipset in it. But the fact that you can actually like detune the game, like the hardware to match the game basically, so that you can bump down the resolutions and stuff and deal with the battery life and the hardware. I mean, it's I guess what I'm saying is the customizability of it on like the software, and just sort of tweak it to match what game you're trying to play. All that kind of stuff. So cool.
And you can do it on the fly with like just a couple of buttons, as opposed to like digging into settings or for NVIDIA or something like that. Like this is just like you push a button and you go and you're done, and you go right back into the game, and you can say, okay, yep, that worked. Okay, so it's working great. And some of the things that you could do is you can downsample the frame rate. You can turn down the resolution, but then upsample it again so that it like still looks 1080p, even though it's actually
it upscales like doesn't it do like hardware, like GPU upscaling of the resolution?
Yeah. And so like what's really compelling about this is, if you could imagine, this would never happen obviously, but if you could imagine taking a Steam Deck but putting like an M2 processor in it, like with as powerful as that is, with that software, could you just imagine like how small you could make that form factor and how well that would run. And again, like I know there's probably like engineers that are like screaming at their phones right now saying, you can't do that, you moron. But like just when you think about like what the possibilities,
not necessarily an M2, but I think that the idea of like 2 or 3 years from now, like if and when like x86 instructions get really like everything is like really ported over well for both Windows and Linux, to especially like GPU drivers and stuff for for ARM based computing that's not Apple That's really what you're trying to say when you're saying like the M2. Like it's really just, but something that's more powerful than like a smartphone processor.
Yeah.
That's
even
ARM based.
Even a smartphone processor.
That could actually catch up to it. You're absolutely right. Yeah,
and that's what that's one of the things that Matt was saying was ultimately what he wants to see is not a Steam Deck, but Steam software running on your phone. I mean, that's really what the ultimate goal here. And the Steam Deck is basically like a step towards that, but it's kind of like the notch in phones. Like it's we're not quite there for under-screen sensors just yet, but this will get us a little bit closer to that. And so what the ultimate conclusion is that the Steam Deck is an iteration of a process that will ultimately see much wider adoption of portable gaming, and that is huge.
It is.
That is so huge, because right now if you're gaming, you're on a Switch or you're on your couch. There's really no,
and you're siloed by the fact that all the consoles have exclusive games, and you can't get around that by using the Steam Deck. But at least Steam is much more open, and it's much better for like indie games and stuff like that. It is an open store for better and for worse, and so then you have the reliability issues and stuff with that. But I understand that. I believe that Steam with the Steam Deck is actually curating like what's actually available on it, so that making sure that it runs. I think that was what I got from what they were saying. But still, like it does feel like the most like open solution to be able to run most things and have like more games available. Because that really is. I feel like exclusive games and different platforms are as much a roadblock to like that like dream platform, outside of like a specific console than anything else, right? Because I'm fine with exclusive games, but it's just, it feels like with everything else, it feels like all these gaming the companies that produce games are getting bought up and consolidated into like these giant houses of and it's just it's
Microsoft,
not,
excuse me,
right? Well, not just Microsoft, but I mean Activision and just it.
Well, Microsoft now is Activision.
It just goes back to that old saying that less choice is better. I mean, or is worse. Less choice is worse. Is bad. It's bad. And that like that to me is like what I hope that even if it's just limited success, because I know that Steam can't produce like or was it Valve that produces? No. What's the company behind Steam? Is it Valve?
Valve. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure Valve can't.
We're not gamers.
No, not at all. But just if they have some success with the Steam Deck, which I think honestly they probably are selling as many as they can make. I mean, the fact that I think right now if you order one, you can't get it until like November.
I want to say it's 2023, but I could be wrong.
Okay. That very well could be possible. They almost feel like electric car manufacturers or electric truck manufacturers that aren't Tesla, that you order one now, it's like, sometime next year.
Right.
It's scarcity and we have all the pandemic stuff, and I'm just kind of just going off the rails here, but it's just, but what I'm hoping though is that even in that like limited popularity, that it's only limited basically by the fact that it does really kind of appeal to nerds. But I mean, how many? I got to think gaming PCs are one of the highest like growth areas of PC sales right now.
Yeah.
That are only again limited by the scarcity of the parts to build them. But I would hope that their success will lead to maybe some opening and like game studios and saying, well, while it's nice to get some money from a specific console manufacturer, like wouldn't it be nice if it was on everything so we can make more money? I don't know. I am not a gamer, and I'm speaking outside of my area of expertise, but to me that's like the limiting thing. So
But even so, like end of April, early May, I don't remember exactly what the timeline was, but between the Steam Deck and the Playdate, it was a really great month for gamers. And like I'm a little sad when I tell you that I was actually going to borrow Giovanni's Playdate when I went to Hawaii just to have something to like play on the plane and stuff like that. But obviously I left Digital Trends, so I can't borrow it anymore. So I'm a little sad about that. But anyway, it's fine. It's fine. I just won't get a Playdate because I thought about like, hey, maybe this would be a great Father's Day present. I could take it to Hawaii and it'd be fun. And then I found out that if you order one now, you don't get it until 2023. Right. So whoopsie.
I've really, what would be really cool is like an Oculus sort of what's the name of their mobile? I mean, you Quest? Own one, the play that you played, like a Quest, but that just plugs into just like the visual part of it that just plugs into the Steam Deck.
Oh yeah, okay, I see where you're going with that. That could be fun. And you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if someone is hacking on that as we speak, but. Right. That is going to have to wait for another podcast because that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. Please consider subscribing to this podcast if you enjoyed it. And if you really enjoyed it, I would love it if you would like to write a review for the show. And if you want some early access, jump onto Patreon at patreon.com/benefitofaDoubt. Although you missed the month that I wasn't going to bill because of the hiatus. So maybe wait until July. You can write to the show by visiting benefitofaDoubt.com/contact. I'd like to thank co-producer Cliff for coming onto the show and talking about the month of May and for all of his hard work behind the scenes. But most of all, and as always, I'd like to thank you for listening and for giving us the benefit of the doubt.
And the beard is out.
The beard is out as my dog sneezes in the background.
Still recording. So
I know I haven't ended the broadcast yet. That's okay. Here we go. Bye.